Colin Cowherd reacts to Lane Kiffin leaving Ole Miss for LSU. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and react to this. We already did a video on my immediate reaction to Lane leaving Ole Miss and going to LSU. And now we're going to listen to Uncle Colin's. So let's do it. Colin and John Middlecoff is also joining him on this one. Let's see what they got to say.
Let's just address a massive college football story
sure.
that you and I care about.
Yeah, of course.
So college football, what you saw Lane Kiffin do feels a little different now because of the college football playoff. You used to leave a program, and they were going to a bowl game. They weren't playing for a national championship. And I don't think Ole Miss was going to win a natty, but it wouldn't have shocked me with Lane Kiffin if they won 2 or 3 games and finished in the top 2 or 3. So it does feel a little gross. But big picture is if you think about, if you really think about what happened, the NCAA 4 or 5 years ago was rigid. And you went from that, the rigidity of the NCAA, to pure, unadulterated, HGH-infused capitalism.
So that's what we're kind of seeing in real time, right? We're seeing like this evolution of college football in real time because everything happens so fast. We went from no one's getting paid, right? They're student athletes. This is college football. It's pure. It's the most pure form of sport. We went from that to, well, now the conferences are run by TV channels, right? Like Fox and ESPN are in bed with the SEC and the Big Ten and all this stuff. These coaches are getting paid more than pro coaches, and the players are getting paid not just by their name, image, and likeness, but by who the hell ever, right? Any donor, any booster, anyone can get involved now and cut a check for anything. They can say, hey, here's $10 million for the best quarterback and recruit in the nation. Hey, here's $30 million to help pay a buyout. Hey, here's $20 million to go get the next coach or the next staff or whatever. And there's no regulation, there's no cap, there's no rules, there's no nothing. And it's not just the money. We're also seeing that with something like the playoffs, right? We go from no playoffs to a bad seeding process. Okay, let's change the seeding process. Now there's a bad ranking process. Now I'm sure next year we'll see a change in the automatic bids because now Duke and Virginia right now are this week are playing for an automatic bid. So the NCAA is like, well, wait a minute. We would have to boot 2 top 10 teams out if BYU and Duke or whatever, if they end up winning, and then all of a sudden we got to boot out Notre Dame and Miami. Hold on a second. This is a TV show. We want to put the most compelling stories out there. How can we do that? And then there's going to be a change next year. And then what will happen the following year? It's going to expand. And then that'll come with a whole other can of worms. So it's just the Wild West in every single way. And we're seeing this play out in real time. I'll go ahead and tell you what's going to really rock the boat and what's going to eventually happen and has already happened. But what happens if, let's say, I'll give you 2 examples. Let's say Lane would have stayed at Ole Miss. Or let's just say John Summerall, because he's at Tulane. He's coaching through the playoffs and all that. Let's say Summerall is coaching through the playoffs. And let's say Tulane goes to the national championship. What if Summerall says, actually, I'll stay at Tulane the day of the national championship. I'll stay. But I want you to give me $10 million. You give me $10 million and I'll stay. If not, I'm not coaching this game. Right? Now that's a crazy example. Or what happens if, we just saw with UNLV, what happens if in that same situation, let's say Ole Miss goes to the national championship, and Trinidad Shambles says, I'm not playing in this game unless you give me $15 million. Game's in 3 hours. Your decision. Right? School, that is going to happen. And if you think that's crazy, it already happened with UNLV. Okay, the UNLV quarterback basically strong-armed the team before a rivalry game and said, I want a blank bonus. And they said, brother, it's UNLV. Hit the road. And he bounced. But that's the next step of this, where players and coaches and whoever are going to realize the leverage they have in certain moments, and they're going to use that leverage.
And there's no boundaries. and it's the wild, wild west. Just like the wild, wild west in the 1800s. You had territorial governors and you have commissioners of conferences, but everybody's in their own self-interest. And so, listen, this is Harbaugh to Michigan, Lane Kiffin to LSU. It's massive. It'll be controversial. It'll be great for the sport. And one of the little guys gets burned. I don't.
But how crazy is that? One of the little guys is a top 10 SEC team with a legitimate history. You know, like, this isn't, San Jose State. Like, the little guy in the situation is what a lot of schools would think of as one of the major players. So, what the hell happens to the little guy? The little guy will be removed in a few years. There will not be the Utah States and the Wyomings and even the Southern Misses and teams like that, UTEP and whoever. They won't exist. They can't exist in this ecosystem. We've already seen it. That's another part of this that we've already seen is the conference realignment. All right. If Ole Miss is a little fish in this pond, then you might as well go ahead and remove the just go ahead and remove college football from 70% of colleges. Make your 3 or 4 super conferences. And go from there.
Lose sleep on this stuff because I've been watching it my entire life, but wasn't this bound to happen if you hired Kiffin?
Yeah, I just think there's no easy way to leave a school anymore. I mean, these schools now are paying $50 million for a guy to go away in the middle of October.
Well, I would argue the hardest way to leave a school is on the eve of what could be a conference championship berth, and also 2 weeks before the playoffs in which you were trying to win a national championship.
So you have LSU out to poach your coach for the last month and a half. That's abnormal. These buyouts got so extreme. We're like, you and I kept saying, well, these guys are safe. Turns out they're not, and they're getting bought out left and right.
But why aren't they safe? They aren't safe because of don't look at me like that, Colin. They aren't safe because of the money. When it was just up to the school, a school's not going to pay a $60 million buyout. Because remember, Brian Kelly's buyout was $54 million or whatever, but he's got an entire staff. Okay. So let's just say $60 million. A school, an athletic department, isn't going to pay a $60 million buyout in October to then turn around and give a $100 million contract to a guy, to then go find a staff, to then pay $25 million a year for a roster. But a bunch of boosters will. We heard that the Brian Kelly buyout, $30 million of it was one anonymous donor. So when you have that kind of money and it doesn't matter at all, then that's what turns into the Wild Wild West.
I also think part of the problem for Lane is he's a controversial and polarizing figure. And he's really done a lot to change his image, right? The documentary that he did.
Well, we think. But a lot's coming out now that it was like, well, it was kind of smoke and mirrors. And look, the Lane Kiffin thing, I don't have a dog in the fight as far as like LSU or Ole Miss. I think it's pretty obvious that schools should not be able to poach or talk to or negotiate with a coach during the season while he's coaching, just like the NFL. There should be tampering rules. You can't negotiate with, like in the NFL, for example, if Brock Purdy was going into his free agency year, a team shouldn't be able to negotiate a contract with him in week 7. Right? You should have to wait until the end of the season. He shouldn't be negotiating free agent terms with another team while he's playing for whatever team he's on, right, at the time. That obviously should be changed. The tampering thing, the window, the calendar, when you can talk to, when you can sign, when you can't, all that stuff absolutely has to change.
You just look at him physically. What do you think he's lost? 30 pounds?
Drinking.
He's politically, he's talked a big game, how this place changed his life, gets him into the playoffs, and then leaves them for essentially their big brother, who I think it's hard. I understand where their fans are mad, but like I understand both sides. I just think these things are ugly. It's pretty rare. Remember a couple years ago when Saban retired right after the national championship game, and DeBoer just left Washington, and it was a pretty seamless, from Washington to Alabama because everyone was done.
But yeah, it's a completely normal procedure. Everyone's done. Okay, now you can leave. Now you can negotiate. Now you can do whatever. It would have been really weird for Saban to retire before the playoffs, and then DeBoer to go from Washington to Alabama before the playoffs. That would have been weird, right? It would have been weird for Saban to just leave Alabama high and dry before the playoffs, and it would have been weird for DeBoer to leave Washington high and dry to go coach another team who's in the playoffs. And that's exactly what's happening here, except for LSU's not in the playoffs. But that's exactly what's happening.
You're seeing, this cycle, all these – Penn State doesn't even have a coach. Now, we can argue whether they're a top 10, 5. I don't know where they land, but they could easily steal a guy in the next couple of days, and that could be weird. Who's to say that it's not a top 15 program that they steal a guy from? So it's just – it's a lot different in the NFL. Like you said, there are regulations, there are rules. The New York Giants can't steal Sean McVay. But LSU can steal Lane Kiffin. Well, honestly, it looked like kind of easily.
Well, yeah, and Rick.
Yeah, it's called $100 million and $25 million a year on a roster.
Pitino noted this on social media. He said it's a calendar.
Was that actually
issue.
Rick Pitino? I almost didn't even believe. I thought it was like a fake account. I didn't realize it was actually Rick.
Yeah, and he said it's a calendar issue. He goes, I wouldn't build my team to be a number 1 seed with a chance to win a national championship and a day before the tournament, March Madness, bail.
Yeah,
he said
crazy.
You couldn't do that. It's a calendar issue, and college football allows it. For years and years, I was on my radio show and TV show, John. I'm sure at least once you heard me say this. It's an $8 billion sport with no CEO. It was boxing. Like, of course, every boxer was out for itself, and every promoter, Bob Arum and Don King, ran boxing. The SEC commissioner ran the sport. And then you have ESPN and Fox saying, guys, it's an $8 billion industry.
Yeah.
We're going to make this more like pro football. We're going to have
really think about that. Like, at the table of the biggest conferences in the sport is ESPN and Fox. It's not some chancellor or some athletic director or whatever. It's ESPN and Fox. What do you think ESPN and Fox are going to do? What do you think you think they care about the student athletes? Right? The second people quit pretending that college sports was not about the money, and the second money became a thing, you realized very quickly just how big of a business it is. It's the second biggest sport in the world, or in the country, not the world, in the country. Right? The NFL is number 1, college football is number 2. Right? Bottom line. That's just how it is. So now that it's like, all right, now it is about the money. Okay, well, if it is about the money, then we're going to have to regulate this, because just like Colin said, you wouldn't have the NBA unregulated. You wouldn't have another pro sport unregulated. And this is as unregulated as it gets in every single way. It's not. I want to keep referencing that. It's not just about the money. It's about, like, they don't even have the playoff system nailed down. Think about how crazy that is, right? We're sitting here and we listen to, well, Auburn, Alabama has been a rivalry since whatever date. Harvard and Brown played in 1805, the first rivalry game, whatever. Like Ohio State, Michigan, this is the 100 and blah, blah, blah time they've gone at it. This is, sport at its purest. Yeah, okay. And they don't even have a playoff system. It's this old traditional pure sport, and the end of the year, the way you win the championship is completely malleable from year in and year out. The conferences in which the teams are is completely malleable year in and year out. Who teams play. Okay, well, wait, this is your rival? Actually, we're going to completely change the schedule now. We're going to make this a little different. You're going to play them once every 4 years. But wait, it's our biggest rival. Yeah, I know. Yeah, whatever. Rutgers? Yeah, you're playing UCLA now. Wait, what? Like, it's completely being changed in front of our own eyes.
An AFC and NFC, the SEC and the Big Ten. So I don't, if you are a college football program and you hire Lane Kiffin and you don't understand the reality of your calendar and understanding this can happen, then you're naive. And I can feel for an Ole Miss fan, but this is a calendar issue. And I said last week, aggressive men, if Wall Street did not have a regulatory board. You would see, if you didn't have regulations at companies, if we didn't have an IRS, what do you think it would be like for aggressive men in this country? They would be taking big swings and doing many things that felt skeevy and unethical. So until college football and the NCAA put up boundaries, I mean, we put up some boundaries in the portal. We put up some boundaries in NIL. There's no boundaries on coaches leaving.
Exactly. And that's the big thing with this calendar. People keep talking about the calendar. The calendar, the academic calendar that Colin's talking about, is in place because of the student part of the student athlete, right? It lines up with the semesters. Well, the coaches aren't going to class. So they should have a totally separate calendar. Like, they should not have anything to do with when classes are open, when classes are closed, when a semester starts, when it doesn't, all this other stuff. It's so simple. There should not be tampering, just like in the pros. If you just add that, I don't care what the calendar is. Keep the calendar, the registrar, so that these students can sign up for their classes. These $13 million a year salaried students can sign up for, Chemistry 106. But all you have to do with the coaches is say, all right, there is a no tampering period for coaches that are under contract until this date. And you want to know what the date should be? The day after the championship. Easiest thing in the world. Now, if you fire a coach, yeah, sure, whatever. They can do whatever they want. Like James Franklin. You fired him? Okay, he can go talk to whoever. Sure, fine. But a coach that is actively coaching should not be being courted by other schools. And that's in every sport. And players, the same thing. Bryce Underwood at Michigan shouldn't be negotiating with Texas in week 8 of the schedule. Bryce Underwood shouldn't be going into a game. I'm not saying he is, but it's just an example. He shouldn't be going into a game where he's also negotiating with the other team. That should not be the case. That's where it's broken. And it's the easiest fix in the world. That's it. That's step one. But college football, it is as much of a facade as any sport. The idea that it's just pure love of the game, fraternities and sororities and tiny small towns in America rooting for their alma mater. It's like, this is the NFL. This is pro sports. These aren't amateurs. These aren't student athletes. This isn't about your alma mater. This is Fox. This is ESPN. This is big conferences, big money, and they're weeding out everything else. And that's it. And Wyoming, Utah State, Southern Miss, all these schools, they will not have football programs like they currently do. They may have them and play, some other minor leagues. That's all going bye-bye. And it's going to be 30-something teams across, it'll be 50 teams across maybe 4 conferences. You'll have a condensed 10 or 11 game schedule. You'll eliminate all of the, cupcake weeks and all of that. And then you'll have an expanded playoffs, and you'll have a 4-week, something like that, playoff. And that'll be it. And it'll be the NFL. And you know what? 30 million people will watch every single week. And that'll be it. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Good stuff. College football is changing in front of our eyes. Wake up! Doing this video early, so I just woke up. All right. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.